Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of WEIU Newswatch. Critical funding that supports PBS is in jeopardy. As a PBS station that supports several communities in central Illinois, we are deeply concerned about the proposed cuts and what that could mean for our station moving forward. WEIU prides itself on many things, including top-notch programming, our partnerships with local communities, and our mission to educate and train broadcast media students at Eastern Illinois University. But all of that comes at a cost, and that financial support is at risk of being eliminated. We reached out to U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth to address our concerns, and she graciously accepted our invitation to be interviewed. And here is that exchange. Senator Duckworth, we do appreciate you joining us during this very critical time for public media and for, of course, WEIU TV. My name is Kelly Goodwin, and I'm the news director here at WEIU TV. And we're also joined by Eastern Illinois University student Olivia Bennett. She is also a reporter here at WEIU TV. And today we're both going to be asking you a few questions. Last week, as we all know, the U.S. House of Representatives voted and passed a rescission bill to eliminate funding for public media outlets like us here at WEIU. The rescissions package now moves to the Senate, and you're a strong supporter of public media. What does the service mean to you, Senator?
Well, one of my first jobs while I was still a graduate student was working for the American Farmland Trust. And my job was to go out and talk to farmers about their planting practices to use more environmental friendly practices. And in every tractor that I ever got into, they were listening to public radio. For so many of the people across, especially agricultural states, public radio, public television is their main source of information for everything from the news, entertainment, but also those daily updates that they need, everything from weather to crop prices. And so for me, this is more than just about public radio and public TV as you know, as entertainment. It's really a service that affects our economy, affects our farmers, affects people all across the state and all across the country. And so it's really vital that we don't make these cuts.
Senator Duckworth, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. And as important of a person as you are, you can only be one person, and public media needs support of the entire nation. So tell me about why it's important for the nation to support public media.
Well, it's important because you're the foundation for all of our communities. This is where the community can turn to for updates. This is where it's all the daily life, everything that's happening in your community. You can get that information. It's really important because you have the local community's information and you are meeting the needs of the local community. What somebody in Springfield, Illinois might need can be completely different than what somebody might need in New York City. And so you can't, when you have satellite media, it's a nationwide thing. It doesn't take into account the local community needs and interests. And that's what public media does, is that you provide the national look, but also most critically important, the information that people need in their communities, where they live, where they're raising their kids.
Public media needs support of the public, but it also needs support of state politicians, senators like yourself and like your fellow senators. So tell me, have you been able to gauge the sentiment of your other senators towards this issue, and how do you plan to rally them in support of public media?
Well, I can tell you that all the Democrats certainly support it. And if you go to some of the senators from states like Alaska, I would be surprised if they did not support public media. Oftentimes, again, public media is providing the critical information that people need for their daily lives. But you have to understand that this giant bill that is coming before Congress, whose sole goal is to fund literally billions and billions of dollars in tax cuts for the wealthiest 1/2 of 1% of our country needs to be funded in some way. And they are willing on the Republican side of the aisle to cut things like public media in order to give Elon Musk's and our billionaires even more money for their pockets. And I think that that's absolutely fundamentally wrong and un-American.
Can you go ahead and put the funding for public media into perspective for me? When we look at the dollar figure, it seems massive. It seems like lots of our taxpayer dollars are going into this, but can you explain to me why that's actually a small portion of the overall budget and how much it actually costs Americans?
It is absolutely minuscule. If you look at today, we had Secretary Hegseth of the Department of Defense came to talk about what he wants in the budget for the Department of Defense, and it's essentially $1 trillion. Public media is not even 1/2 of 1% of $1 trillion. And so where we are is looking at a very small investments for a very large public good that actually returns more to the community than we actually make in investments into public media. And so frankly, it is irresponsible to propose these cuts. There are places that we can cut funding. One of the things that we can do is perhaps ask our wealthiest Americans to pay a little bit more in taxes. I mean, as Warren Buffett said, he pays a lower tax rate than his secretary does, and that's simply wrong. And it's especially wrong if you're saying that in order to give Warren Buffett a tax cut, you have to cut public media. I don't think that that is a bargain that most Americans want.
Senator, I was just going to say, if we could pivot just for a moment in our line of questioning, as I introduced at the beginning, Olivia is a student at Eastern Illinois University and also a major part of our news program here at WEIU. Our entire newscast is supported by students like Olivia, who also, I might add, rely on some financial support to attend Eastern Illinois University. Can you talk about your support and the importance of Pell Grants and why cuts to that program would be detrimental to students like Olivia?
Oh my goodness, Pell Grants is what makes education affordable for most Americans. Most of us don't come from wealthy families. I went to school on Pell Grants, and Pell Grants is what allows the average middle class and first-time college students for a family to be able to afford to go to college. I put together a combination of Pell Grants, some student loans, work-study program, and I worked 2 jobs in order to pay my way through college. So I understand what that's like. And I, in fact, had our university president came to talk to me, and he said, if these Pell Grant cuts go through, even if they go through for 6 months, we will have to shut down entire departments within the university, if not go out of business altogether. And really, when you cut Pell Grants, you are stealing from future generations' economic productivity, because that's going to be all these students who cannot afford to go to school, and they are not going to be able to earn more money once they become adults. And it's going to mean that folks are not going to be able to contribute to our productivity, our global competitiveness. All of that is based on their ability to access affordable education through use of Pell Grants.
Senator, one final question for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So obviously we have a lot of roadblocks that we face in terms of American funding, not just for public media, but for lots of other issues. So tell me why it's important to support funding for public media, even though it might affect funding for other issues.
Well, I think in a time when we have less and less local news coverage, it's getting more difficult to find unbiased news online. Public media is the answer, right? And cutting funding just to, again, keep the top 1% more tax breaks is not going to make our country better. Public media is what makes our country better. It's what unites us across the country, but it's also so critically important into preserving the priorities for our local communities. Our nation faces a mountain of funding challenges, but frankly, the way you pay for it is not by cutting a public good that I think actually punches well above its weight. I think for what we spend on public media and what we get back in return, this is an incredible return on investment of taxpayer dollars. I'd rather spend money here than I would in some of the proposals that the president is doing where he's spending money. And I would think that this is a wise investment that we should be making into the future.
Senator Duckworth, thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to following up with you in the days to come.
Thank you. Take care.